Hi guys, so in the news today there is a back and forth going on between the UK government and Michel Barnier. So what happened was that Boris Johnson, through his Brexit negotiator David Frost, said that the UK was willing to reopen the withdrawal agreement, but not with the European Union, but to actually ignore parts of the withdrawal agreement. Now, Michel Barnier, in response to this, has said that he's extremely worried by these words because the withdrawal agreement is something that was signed by both the UK and the EU. It was sent to European parliaments to be agreed. It passed through those parliaments. It was signed into EU law. And the same happened in the UK. The UK had their withdrawal agreement bill. It went through Parliament. It went through the House of Lords. It was signed, done and dusted. Now, what's happening is that certain Brexiteers are not happy with it, but they don't understand that it's an international agreement. And what they're doing is they're putting pressure on Boris Johnson, it seems, to cherry pick parts of it and remove them. Now, this is not possible because this is an international agreement. Actually, let me take a step back. It is possible, but it would extremely damage the UK's standing in the world. You know, the UK has signed up to many agreements, and not ones related to Brexit or the European Union, international agreements. If the UK says we're no longer going to honour those agreements, it turns the UK pretty much into a pariah state, a state that no longer recognises or follows international law. Think about that for a moment. The UK is saying we're going to tear up international agreements. Now, is this actually going to happen? I hope not, but it's not impossible. Boris Johnson is extremely unpredictable. The Brexiteers are extremely unpredictable. This may just be saber-rattling on the side of the UK government in order to pressure the EU to give them some sort of concessions. Now, if they think this is going to work with the European Union, I think they're mistaken. Now, I could be wrong. Maybe the European Union will say, look, we need you to follow international agreements. We don't want you to become a pariah state because we'd like to have a relationship with you after Brexit, after you leave the transition period. But at the same time, they're not going to undermine the European Union itself. I really wish Brexiteers would understand this. Both the politicians who are Brexiteers and ordinary people who are Brexiteers. The European Union will defend the Union first. They're willing to take a hit financially if that is necessary. Look at what happened with the pandemic. The European Union spent hundreds of billions of euros in order to protect the Union, to help out individual member states. But overall, this was to protect the Union. They wanted to protect the European Union from disintegrating. And this pandemic was a serious threat to that. Now, the UK is no longer a threat to the European Union. It is a cost. It will be a cost. The European Union don't want Brexit. They didn't vote for it. But they understood that, look, the UK want to leave. We can't stop them. But we're going to protect the Union first. We're not going to allow us to be damaged by this. But if there's a financial cost, we're willing to accept that. Now, the UK is saying that we're willing to tear up international agreements is not a sign of strength. This is a sign of weakness. This is desperation. If you're in a strong position, you don't say, we're willing to tear up international agreements to get our way. I know for the Brexiteers, it sounds like strength. Yes, we're going to do whatever it takes to get what we want. But that's not how international trade works today. That's not international diplomacy. That's not international politics. Let's imagine for a moment the UK want later to have an agreement with Japan or with China or the United States or any other country around the world. This country will say, will you recognize international agreements? Now, the UK can say, yes, of course we will. And those countries will say, yes, but you didn't recognize the agreement with the European Union. So why should we sign on to something with you? By doing this, you're going to cut the legs out from under you. You're putting yourself in a position where you become pretty much a pariah state. Now, are the Tories willing to do this in order to keep Brexiteers on board, to keep Brexiteers who donate to the party on board? Possibly. Boris Johnson may see this as some sort of game of chicken with the European Union. I'm willing to crash right into you and destroy our reputation on the world stage in order to gain some political advantage, in order to protect my position in Parliament, to protect the Conservative Party. I wouldn't put it past them doing that, throwing the UK under a bus in order to protect the party. They have done it before. But this is extremely serious. This is not a game. You're willing to put the reputation of the United Kingdom on the line here to gain some advantage in a trade negotiation. And it's a trade negotiation that has a time limit that was set by the British government, that was set by Boris Johnson. Remember, the time limit for the transition period was not set by the European Union. The European Union have always said, if you want to extend the transition period, we're open to that. If you have more time, perhaps we can get a better deal for both sides. But Boris Johnson created legislation to stop him having that time necessary to have a good deal. I'm not saying it's impossible to have some sort of decent deal with the European Union. But by setting a time limit, you're forcing yourself into a position where you have to either walk away with nothing or compromise for the sake of time. It's an idiotic position to take. It doesn't make any sense. Now, this may just be, once again, a bluff. This could be just Boris Johnson playing chicken with the European Union. But if it is a bluff and it's just an attempt to rattle the European Union, I think this is damaging in the long term for the UK. You used to be a member. You could have actually had a decent agreement with the European Union. Say, look, we're leaving. We want to have an agreement with you. We want to align ourselves on things like trade or standards. And then we can, live our separate lives. We can be two different entities living together, but separate. There's no problem with that. But that would be impossible because the people who drove this Brexit train in the first place, the Nigel Farages, the Ian Duncan Smiths, the Boris Johnsons, were convincing people that the European Union was a problem. The European Union was infringing upon ordinary citizens' rights in the UK. They lied to the public. They said they could have their cake and eat it too. I just want to finish on this by saying that this is not a sign of strength. This is a sign of weakness. You don't say, I'm willing to ignore international agreements in order to get my way, especially on a trade deal. Boris Johnson and the Tories, by doing this, are willing to jeopardise Northern Ireland peace, the UK's position and its standing on the world stage, and its possible relationship with the European Union going forward. Why? Because a number of politicians in Boris Johnson's party who call themselves Brexiteers are throwing a tantrum because they haven't read the withdrawal agreement, they haven't bothered to read it, and now they're having a problem with it. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot. I want to say a big thank you to all of my patrons. You ensure that this channel continues to exist. I'm eternally grateful for all of your support. If you join Patreon, you will receive instant access to our Discord server, where we have both audio and video chats. You can chat with me and other patrons, where we discuss important and non-important issues. Becoming a patron per month costs about the same as a large coffee, so why not check it out?